On the member website, we have a section called the forum, where you can chat with each other, tell the truth about yourself, lie, make stuff up, answer each other's questions. I'm just suggesting that you might find it beneficial. I'm visiting there more often and answering questions, which I'll continue to do if people go. Sometimes there's not much posting in the forum. Up to you whether you use it. If you don't want to use it, I don't care. I just was suggesting that it might be a potential tool, and I'll continue to go and post there as long as people are using it. Here's a member who says, I am attending my first Real Love workshop next month, which, by the way, if you haven't gotten an announcement, write to Donna at reallove.com and she'll send you one. It's going to be at Seaside Spiritual Living Center, I think, in Encinitas, California, toward the end of this month. She'll send you a flyer. I don't remember the exact dates. You'd think I'd know since I'm going and speaking there, but I don't. The member says, can you give me an idea of what to expect or ways to prepare for it to be as productive as possible? Thanks. No, I can't give you a single idea what to expect since I don't know what to expect, since I haven't written a word of it, and since very often I go to these and don't plan for them. So, nope, don't know what to expect, wouldn't do anything to prepare. And what you get depends on partly what you're looking for, partly what you expect. Mostly I'd recommend you don't. And the most important thing is how much you trust. If you go willing to learn, if you go willing to consider that the way you see the world and yourself and everybody else might not be right, could be made clearer, then you'll learn a lot. So, just go. I've talked on many occasions about how easily we become addicted to forms of imitation love, like crack cocaine. And some forms are obvious: drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, shopping. It's pretty easy to see those. Some of them are sneakier, and one of them was just brought to my attention recently by talking to a guy on the phone. This man spends all day, every day, telling everybody how miserable his life is, how terrible his life has gone, how hopeless it is, how afraid he is. Once, just, I don't know, for kicks, I guess, in a 2-minute period of time, he said, I'm afraid 8 times. That's every 15 seconds. So I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. Shoot. After 8 times in 2 minutes, I said, well, I'm starting to get kind of afraid myself. You say something often enough and it becomes true. And it's a really seductive addiction. I'm afraid and I'm miserable. It's kind of like wallowing in the muck. Burying yourself completely and then saying nothing can be done, everything is hopeless. And then you really don't have to do anything now. You don't have to take any responsibility for your life. You don't have to change. You don't have to learn. You just kind of cry at everybody, and people stop and say, oh, poor you, and they'll throw you a rope. But of course, people like that don't take the rope, because if they took hold of the rope and they were pulled out of the sinkhole, well, then who would they be? They wouldn't even know. They wouldn't know how to survive. All they know is the sinkhole. Crazy as it sounds, they enjoy misery. I can still remember the first time that I heard somebody say, and it just cracked me up, when they said, yeah, my grandmother enjoys poor health. And I thought, that's perfect. That's exactly what victims do. They enjoy their misery. They like the sympathy and the attention that they get. I will always remember a lady who came in as a patient, and she was a patient to my office, and she was surrounded by, 6 or 8 family members. She was crying in pain. She was in real pain. I took a look at her eye, and she had what's called narrow angle glaucoma. which is, they tell me, kind of like blowing up a truck tire inside your eye. That's how it feels. Apparently, this hurts worse than anything else. No kidding. Because I've talked to people who've had it, who've delivered babies, who've had brain tumors, and they say, this is it, baby. It just feels like your eye is going to pop. So she was in a lot of pain. And so her pain was real, but there was just something about her pain that I thought, she looks around too much to see if people are seeing her pain. And so I described the cure for it, which is miraculous. It's one of the wonders of modern medicine. You can sit somebody with narrow angle glaucoma at a laser machine and cure their narrow angle glaucoma in, I don't know, 10 seconds. It's an amazing thing to watch people go from just agony. I've seen sweet little church-going grandmothers curse like sailors, it hurts so bad. 10 seconds later, poof, they feel wonderful. So I set this lady at the machine, and all you have to do is put a little instrument on the eye, which when it's numbed, you don't even feel it. It feels about as uncomfortable as a contact lens. And I tried to put this thing on her eye. I can put one of these particular examination contact lenses on a thrashing alligator. I've been doing this a long time. I could not get this thing on her eye. And I'm thinking, this is starting to add up really kind of weird, And at one point, she thrashed on the stool and fell to the floor. Well, I've never been able to not put a contact lens on somebody. I've never had anybody fall off the stool. And I'm thinking, this is strange. So she falls up, and I bend over to pick her up. And in a half second, that she could look right into my face and that none of her family members could see her, she looked me full in the face and she did this. She winked at me. I wanted to turn to the family and go, did you all see this? Do y'all realize you're being conned? This lady had apparently arranged her life so that everybody attended to her every moan, gripe, complaint. She ruled a large extended family. So she made such a fuss, I had to take her to the operating room, put her to sleep, admit her. The bigger the fuss, the better. And she was delighted. All the while she was in agony. So get this. She suffered through hours more pain and hospitalization and admission and IV solutions and all of that when I could have cured her in 10 seconds because she was enjoying the attention. Astonishing. Victims enjoy their misery. It's an addiction. They get an enormous amount of sympathy, but the biggest thing victims get is complete lack of responsibility. Oh, look what they've done to me. As soon as I claim to be a victim, then I don't have to do a thing. The whole world has to come to my rescue. Another question. Member says, when do you start teaching children? So like a month ago, Sylvia, made up name, coincidentally much like my granddaughter's name, Sylvia would explore my face with her hands, and it was really sweet. But now she's starting to grab, and those little fingernails can sometimes really hurt. So do I just use those rules that you used with your Cub Scouts? Like, you remember that was actually Boy Scouts, but it's actually Varsity Scouts. They're older Boy Scouts. I had 3 rules that I taught them. You can't hurt other people's things. You can't hurt other people's feelings. And when I'm talking, you ain't. Well, these are really great rules for 14-year-old kids. And for a 6-month-old child, fairly meaningless. You could try teaching her the 3 rules. Let me know if it works. So it really depends. And then you continue. Like, no hurting anybody else or their things, or do I let her grab things out of my hand? I'm unclear on this. You teach kids according to their ability to understand. And frankly, it's really not all that complicated. So like, for example, when a kid can stack blocks when they're playing, and that's like, 10, 11, 12 months old. When a kid can stack blocks, a child can also guess if they can put one block on top of the other. I promise you, they can put the block away in the box. See? So when are they old enough to put things away? They give it away when they can start to put things together. Um, so what about a pre-verbal child like a 6-month-old? If she reaches out and grabs your hand hard, words aren't going to do anything, but you can show her. So the instant I have a grandchild who grabs hold of me, for one thing, I just don't handle pre-verbal grandchildren because they're just way too much trouble. But if a child grabs hold of you with their nails and they're 6 months old, don't isn't going to mean a thing to the kid. Not a thing. Or, that hurts, mommy. She's 6 months old. So you have to do it quickly, because the child has to form an association between their behavior and your response. So they grab you, you immediately grab her hand, unpeel it, and take it away. You don't have to be harsh. You don't have to slap her or, pour scalding water over her hand. No, just instantly grab her hand. And suddenly enough that the child catches on that I didn't especially like that. You don't have to use a harsh tone of voice. You don't have to be mean. But children don't like to be suddenly grabbed and have their hands moved. They don't. So do that. If she grabs things out of your hand, at 6 months old, too bad. We have grandkids here all the time, and if a 6-month-old kid grabs hold of something and breaks it, well, then it's the fault of whoever put it down within the reach of a 6-month-old child. So you can keep them from hurting you, but grabbing things out of your hand, how do you explain that to a pre-verbal child? Reach out and grab it back from them? Nah, they're supposed to grab things, and it's supposed to be fun. Now, if they grab something that you don't want them to have, that's really easy. You just replace it with something else. If they grab a bottle of cleaning fluid, probably don't let them keep that and see if drinking it would be harmful. When they become verbal, then you can tell them what to do. You can say, do it this way instead of that way, as opposed to constantly saying, don't, stop it, and watch out. Lots more in the parenting book about what to do with verbal kids, but pre-verbal kids really are different. If you want to get some things across to a kid even earlier, when they're pre-verbal, there's books on baby sign language, and they can really be pretty effective. Instead of a kid crying, they can tell you that they want more of things using sign language, which is something I didn't know about when I had kids, but some of my grandkids have learned that. Here's a member who says, hopelessness was a big issue for years for me, and now it's just gone away for the most part. Sometimes I'll find myself standing somewhere feeling vacant and realize that the feeling is back. I don't think people really understand the consequences of indulging hopelessness, much like indulging victimhood. I didn't understand the consequences of that point of view. My agreement with being worthless seemed like reality. Now that's really well said. Before we can feel hopeless, we have to agree with what other people have told us that we're worthless. We have to agree with worthlessness. And it seems real to us if that's all we've ever heard. So you're a living example of how to overcome hopelessness in a real and lasting way. We have to remember the power of trusting and not, in your brilliant words, indulging hopelessness. We have to see how wrong and futile it is to either, 1, believe that we're worthless, or 2, feel hopeless. Now, you may feel hopeless for a few minutes, an hour. You might feel kind of hopeless for a day. If it goes longer than that, then something has to change. you need to call somebody. You need to talk to somebody who can remind you that you are worth something. You're just believing the messages that you got from the time you were a kid, and those are unspeakably powerful. New question, or maybe it's an observation. The warm power of sexual vitality can be confusing. I see that as the biggest source of confusion for men. In the past, sexual pleasure and thoughts could be so exciting and satisfying that I thought that was happiness. Yeah, it's why guys so easily fall in love. Now I can distinguish vitality and energy from sexual energy. Sounds incredibly obvious, but it's taken me 50 years to figure this out, he says. I can feel alive and warm and even physically excited without sexualizing things. Now I can choose. Most men do not seem to be able to do that. Gee, no kidding. My previous partner was sexually addicted, and I have a man, this is a gay man who's saying, I have a man who works here at my place of business who hits on me all the time, and he's married and is a player. In other words, a sexually unfaithful, sexually addicted human being. It's sad to watch. He has no ability to not sexualize things. I laugh and tell him he's married, and he explains that it's okay and nobody will know. Sometimes I get irritated with him, and just to get back at him, I actually consider making him beg, which is a little embarrassing. I mean, once you're on the field of death, insanity actually seems to make sense. But then you recovered. It's any form of imitation love can become this powerfully addictive. Here's a guy who has a family, and yet he's constantly out flirting with probably both men and women, because sex is such an exciting experience. Just like victims become addicted to their victimhood. We find the thing that yields us a great deal, usually early in life, and then we stay with that addiction. Sometimes we switch addictions for the rest of our lives. It's really just unspeakably tragic that our lives are determined so early, and that most of us end our lives pretty much as they were when we were about 4 years old. Here's a writer who says, I'm seeing what a powerful effect comparison can have. There's always going to be somebody who's smarter, taller, meaner, whatever. So if we make comparisons to other people, we're always going to feel less than, always inadequate and less worthwhile. I've done it all my life, and I watched other people do it. You're expressing yourself very well. I'm beginning to see how I can be happy with who I am without comparing that to anybody. I am just okay, even with all my flaws, even though I'm less loving, or less pretty, or less smart, or whatever than lots of people. It's pretty cool. I can feel humble and pretty satisfied with myself at the same time. I like it. And what you just said was brilliant. We can be humble and satisfied. We can be humble and even, paradoxically it might seem, proud in a healthy way. Comparison will just kill us. Nobody is like you. Nobody. People come to me all the time saying, but I'm less than my neighbor, I'm less than her, I'm less than him, I'm less than. Nobody was raised like you. Not exactly like you. Nobody had your DNA. Nobody is you. So to compare yourself to anybody else is crazy. To even say less than, more than, doesn't make sense, because we all started off with different abilities, capacities, wounds, and so on. Misconceptions, lies, distortions. Very cool that you're seeing this. Here's a member who says, my boyfriend and I have been studying real love. We even had an intervention, and after that things have gone a lot better. But when the subject of marriage came up, we both became afraid. I'm afraid that he'll put off a marriage date forever, and he's afraid of screwing this up because he was married once before. You told us not to keep talking when we get afraid, but oh no. We just had to keep trying to resolve this on our own. The fear and the anger got worse and worse until the conversation became impossible. So now I'm wondering if we should get married at all. No, honey, you don't have to get all crazy and wonder if he's the right partner. All you learned is that when two insane people talk, nothing good happens. No big surprise there. You didn't really learn anything about each other, not who you really are. You only learned that when you're afraid, you do badly. Well, not a new revelation. So what do? Don't overanalyze this one thing, this one event. Just ask your boyfriend if you can try the conversation again. Tell him you were crazy. You just want to start over. Don't go over the crazy stuff. Just start over. If you have trouble, take a break. Then try again. If you fail again, find a wise person and involve the wise person in a conference call. Not long ago, I was working with a couple where she wanted to have a baby, and he didn't want to have a baby, which is not really hard to understand since she could be pretty angry, like all day long. And she'd be angry at him and petulant and sulk and pull away and yell at him and criticize everything that he did. And for some crazy reason, he didn't want to raise a child with a woman like that. He wasn't really sure he wanted to be with a woman like that. But to have her be the mother of his child was pretty scary to him. And he'd seen the way that her mother had raised her and her mother before that, and he didn't want anything to do with another generation of that. So she would complain endlessly that he didn't want to have a child, and he would endlessly back off and not want to have the discussion. So you can imagine how this went. So we got off the subject of children and learned to love. He learned to feel. He learned to express his affection toward her. She learned that anger is a poison, that it never, ever works. Never keep talking when you're angry. And now they're working together, instead of her pulling at him one way and him pulling at, actually him just disappearing. They're working together to create a relationship. And in a loving, happy relationship, it would then be possible to raise a happy child. And then we can have a reasonable discussion about whether to have a child. So work on the foundation first before you fuss about what color you're going to paint the walls. For several weeks, new question, I've been trying my best to give my 3-year-old a consistent bedtime routine. Can't begin to tell you how many questions I get about bedtime routine. No kidding. Read the parenting book. Generally, in the past, we would brush teeth, read book after book until I decided I was too tired. So I'd turn off the light and basically beg him to go to sleep, and almost every night I would fall asleep beside him. You sound tired because you are a hostage, because you're doing all the work. Here's this 3-year-old who owns you. You do all the work and you take all the responsibility, which is not good for him. You continue. Anyway, lately we brush teeth, we read 2 books, tell 2 stories. Before I tell him stories, I go to the microwave and warm up this scented stuffed bunny he likes to sleep with. I had never heard this before. Microwaving a kid's bunny. That's pretty clever. Then I tuck him in. When he gets older, just don't let him put his favorite cat in the microwave. So I tuck him in, I kiss him goodnight, and I ask if he wants the door open or closed, and I leave. It doesn't always go smoothly, partly because my husband is still willing to lie down next to my son until he falls asleep. Kids love routine. They love your unsolicited attention. So give both. Make bedtime like party time. Make him look forward to bedtime. And then if he acts up, he loses parts of bedtime. So if he starts to act up, you go, oh, well, gosh, I was really looking forward to telling you a story, but now I won't be able to. Oh, because I've been there and done this with mine and with grandkids and with other people's kids. No, 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 they don't want to lose the story. Poof, they go to bed. Or they don't want to lose a song. You want to get a kid fascinated, pick any song in the world, doesn't matter, any nursery rhyme, and just insert the kid's name in the nursery rhyme. Or insert the kid's name, get a book of fairy tales the kid doesn't know. Insert the kid's name in the fairy tales, tell the stories as though you had made up the stories on your own, and make the kid the hero of the story. You win. The kid will do anything to hear those stories. I told my kids hero stories their entire youth, and should one of them happen to listen to this, which is really unlikely, but I didn't steal them from a fairy tale book. You continue. Tonight, after I warmed up the bunny, I came back into my son's room and saw that he was reading some books. Melted my heart in a way, and I told him when he was ready to sleep, let me know. So he ended up reading and playing in his room for another 20 minutes. By the time he decided that he was ready for bed, it was 9:30. This kid's really conned you, honey. I told him it was too late for me to tell him stories, and he started pitching a fit. It's because you waited way, way too late. You waited till 9:30. Whatever the bedtime is, that's when you tell him, oh, well, then we're going to have to cut out the stories. If his bedtime is at 8, you start telling his stories at 7:30, and if he's not ready at 7:30, he gives up the stories. At 9:30, you're hours past when this should be happening. I told him it was too late for him to tell stories. He pitched a fit. I tried to explain and found myself getting angry because it was 9:30 and it was inconveniencing me. And now you're really screwed, dear, because the kid owns you. The kid's managed to make you mad, which is like the ultimate accomplishment. Ultimately, I didn't know what to do or say, so I ended up telling him 2 super short stories. Boy, this kid's got you around his finger. I figure I added to the bedtime confusion by letting him read the books. I probably should have been clear at that moment that if he wanted to keep reading, it would be at the expense of his stories. How else could I have approached this differently? So, we've talked about this before, but we're going to do bedtime again. Maybe not again for about a year. You have to give him a time to begin his part of the routine. And you can teach remarkably young children to read a digital clock. So if bedtime's 8, he has to start his bedtime routine, toothbrushing, blah, 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 7. And it has to be done by 7:30. So see, never again do you have to tell a kid, hurry up and brush your teeth. How many parents have said that? How many parents as kids have heard that? Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. My gosh, it's boring. I gave up on hurry up. Nope. Here's the time you have to start it. Here's the time it has to be done by. And if you don't have it done by that time, 7:30, poof, you don't get stories and you don't get songs. We had no trouble at all. At 7:30, they were lying in bed waiting for me to come in and tell stories and sing songs because we made it a party. They weren't going to miss the party. They weren't going to be late brushing their own dang teeth. You don't pry kids. I hear these stories. Parents with the jaws of life prying open their kids' mouths and brushing their teeth against their will. You're joking. No, this is the kid's responsibility. Then you describe your part, the reading, the songs, and so on, and then the time he has to be done. And if not, he loses his privileges. If he fusses, he loses more privileges. So if he's late, he loses the story. If he fusses, now he loses the song. If he fusses some more, he loses his nightlight. If he fusses some more, he can sleep in the bathtub. It just goes on and on. Eventually, he sleeps with no light, no blankets, no nothing. And you do it just as calmly as could be. And if you're calm when you impose consequences, you have to go through this list of consequences usually once. Kids are not stupid, but it's a game of brinksmanship. If they see you blink, they go, all I have to do is up the ante. All I have to do is misbehave worse. It's like, watch a kid who says, Mom, and the mother ignores him. And the kid, Mom, mother ignores him. Mom, Mom, Mom. And the kid gets louder and louder. And then the mother finally turns to him and goes, what? The mother doesn't realize it, but the mother just taught the kid this lesson, just like you teach a seal to balance a ball. The mother just taught the kid, I won't pay attention to you until you are screaming and pitching a fit. She taught the kid to do that. We teach our children to play these games at bedtime. No kidding. And then we wonder why they do it. Because you taught them. Because you gave in. Because you blinked. They need a consistent reality. Or you raise them in chaos. You raise them without gravity. A coach wrote me. and said, I spent the day with a lady who went from wired, agitated, highly anxious, who couldn't look me in the eye and fired questions at me faster than anybody I've ever met, into a softer, more relaxed person who ran out of questions, who leaned in and made eye contact and asked for a hug. It was so cool. This is from a coach somewhere. I don't remember who it was now. Then I spent time with another woman and I watched a similar transformation. It is so humbling to have the tools and the capability of being able to enable this kind of transformation. Both ladies asked me about who they could call in addition to me. And they mentioned a particular wise man. I'll make his name up, Wendell, since I don't know a wise man named Wendell, who had volunteered himself to them as a wise man. So picture, the coach experienced a miraculous change in these women, and the women said, well, I need another wise man. Could we call Wendell? The thing is, even though Wendell has been doing real love, I hate that phrase because it doesn't mean anything, doing real love for years, he just doesn't love people very well. I've heard him coach people and he just parrots phrases from the books and tries to fix people. He doesn't really love them. So when people ask me about calling him, what do I say? I find that I'm wanting to steer them away from him to preserve their positive experience of real love. Is that the right thing to do? Or should I just let them call Wendell and let them experience what it's like for themselves? My fear is that they will think that this is what real love is and then get confused or disappear. I don't play games with real love. I don't. It's not a game. We don't fool around. People's lives are literally at stake. To me, real love is a miracle. No kidding. It's as much a miracle to me as it is to anybody else. I'm amazed by it every day. It changes lives, saves lives. And as much as possible, without controlling people, because that's just stupid, I'd like to maximize the possibility that people's lives can change and minimize any distractions or distortions that people might experience. I can't control all that, but I could at least maximize the benefits and minimize the distractions. That's easy. I can't control how people experience real love. My ego isn't involved here. But I do what I can to help people find the love they need. And I can help people who want to avoid unnecessarily awful experiences. You cannot keep people from having negative experiences in real love. There are going to be some wise men who are terrible, some wise men or women who are just having a bad day, whatever. But you can do the best you can. So if somebody asks me straight out, and I get asked this kind of question pretty regularly, would it be helpful to be coached by Fred or be on a conference call with Fred? I do not lie. I won't do it. I don't cover up for Fred. I say, no. That's it. I don't explain why. They say, well, why? No. No, you asked me if it would be good to be on with them. I said, no. I only say, you asked me, I'm telling you it wouldn't help you. Now, you have no idea why I said no. Fred might be a terrible wise person. Fred might be, for example, a sex addict who can't be a wise person for women but can for men. It may be that because of Fred's particular personality he wouldn't suit you. You have no idea why I'm saying no. Now occasionally these assessments get back to me. So Fred calls me and says, oh, I hear that you're telling people that I'm a terrible wise man. I love those calls. No, I didn't say that. Susie asked me if you would be helpful as a wise person or as a coach, and I simply said no. That was our conversation, word for word. Now, if a coach persists and asks me why, sometimes I tell them, here's why I didn't. You lack experience in this. You lack the ability to not sexualize women. You're not prepared yet to really listen to people and love them. and instead you just fix them because it makes you feel good to be powerful in their lives. So I'll certainly answer their question, but I won't lie for them. Periodically, I'm going to tell you little stories from my grandkids, and I think I said last week why I do this. It's really not out of grandfatherly pride, really. Ask people who know me. I don't talk about my grandkids all the time, but they are an absolutely fascinating laboratory to me because I've never seen kids raised from birth in unconditional love. How would I? I didn't raise mine in unconditional love. I didn't catch on to how to do this till, well, late. Till the oldest was like 19, and even then I was still just sort of stumbling along. So I get to see what it's like for kids to be raised without the wounding. It is freakishly cool. So periodically I'm going to tell you little stories, and they happen to be mostly about Sylvie so far, I guess partly because her mother sends me the stories. If my other children would send me stories, I'd tell stories about your children. I'm just teasing. We talked before that kids ask why questions all the time, and we keep answering the questions and we wonder why they keep saying why. And it wasn't until my granddaughter taught me this principle that I understood the answer to why all the whys. All they want to know is, are they loved? That's what they want to know. So I told you a story earlier about, serving Sylvie pizza. Well, why pizza? Well, why frozen? Well, why fresh? Well, why blah, 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 until Jeanette finally says, so I can love you. Oh. End of why questions. That's all she wanted to know. As soon as we get to I love you, the kid's happy. So the kids went into the backyard, Sylvie and Bruce. And Sylvie said, "Why are you," to my daughter, "why are you bringing the bouncy chair?" I'm assuming that's a little blow-up chair that oh, it's probably one of those little chairs with springs that little babies can bounce up and down on. Yeah, that would make me throw up. But the bouncy chair. And so Jeanette says, so that Bonnie, who's 3 months old, can be outside with us. Sylvie says, well, why do you want her to be outside with us? And Jeanette said, so she's not alone. She's not even getting close. Sylvie says, so why do you want her not to be alone? And Jeanette says, I want her to feel happy. Why do you want her to be happy? And Jeanette says, because I love her. Sylvie says, oh, yeah. And she was done. It's all about love, and Sylvie's 3. It doesn't always go perfectly. Learning about love is a lifetime process. So Bruce, 2 years old, playing with one of Sylvie, who's 3, one of Sylvie's toys. And Sylvie says, Bruce, that's mine! I know every parent has heard this before. Bruce says, it's mine. They used to believe that children couldn't consciously tell lies until they were 4 to 6 years old. And here's Bruce, 2 years old, going, I'm holding it, it's mine. He's learned to lie too. Sylvie says, no, it's mine. Bruce, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. It went back and forth. It's mine, it's mine, it's mine. Jeanette is not interfering, the mother. Sylvie says, how about if we take turns? Bruce says, okay. Sylvie brilliantly says, I don't know many kids who could do this. Only a loving mother who taught her could have gotten this across. Sylvie says, okay, you take the first turn. I've never seen a kid do that. Bruce says, okay. 15 seconds later, Bruce says, it's your turn. This flabbergasts me. I've never seen kids do this before. They argue over the turn till they're dead or till the toy is ripped to shreds. Sylvie says, thanks. 1 minute later, Jeanette hears Bruce say, it's mine. And they go back and forth with it's mine. So it's a process. But they're learning to care about each other in the process. It is so encouraging. So imagine what it would be like to be a child who is loved from birth unconditionally and to grow up without all the lies, misconceptions, distortions, uh, awful perspectives, the I'm worthless, the I don't love you wounds. It's a glorious thing to watch. Here's somebody that I worked with for months, a woman. She learned more and more. She felt more and more loved. And she wrote, real love, she said, your unconditional love to be exact, uncovered my anger. Now that sounds like an odd thing to say to me, that I would love her and it had covered her anger. But she goes on to explain. She said, I had no clue, none, how deeply angry I was. A couple of weeks ago when it came out, it was like my will broke. There's no fight or need to be right left. I finally see who I am, what I was protecting so vehemently and how destructive it's been in my life. It feels like a clean slate inside. It's exciting to wake up feeling worthy instead of something wrong with you. I spent $30,000 and more on counselors who would beg me to get angry, and I thought it was a waste of time. The anger came out in this awful victim I played that drove people away, and I've watched people in counseling be told to vent their anger, which they can do for pretty much ever. She continues, I was fearless, even childish, when I was trying to convince someone how wronged I had been and why I was right. I finally trusted you, that you were loving me, God, that God was loving me when I was sane, that if I didn't quit, no matter how hard it was, and if I made a gazillion mistakes, and I have, somehow this would come together. It would come down to live or die. Since this anger has gone, the last 4 times in group, I've been able to share in just a few sentences instead of pages of words. And I've felt seen and loved. I'm grateful. This is great stuff. It would be nice if we could uncover our wounds and our behaviors and be rid of them all at once, but rarely is that the case. You discovered that. You had to uncover this thing, the original wounds, and then that thing, and then another thing. And then the more loved you felt, then finally you felt safe enough for your anger to come out, and you were still loved. So we learn line upon line, experience upon experience, faith upon faith. Keep going. Nice courage. There are so many levels and ways to learn how to feel loved and to learn how to share love. And you give a nice example. You'd worked in real love for a long time and you discovered, holy smokes, you had all this anger that you hadn't expressed. So good for you. Here's a member who says, when I was a young girl, my brother sexually abused me. My oldest daughter, who's 23, recently learned about it and was angry that I had not told her long before and that I haven't shared all the details with her still. She says she's my daughter and she is here for me. I can just hear the tone of voice. But I'm your daughter and I'm here for you. You continue though. Not telling her seems to be telling her that I don't love her or trust her, or at least that's how she takes it. Honey, don't ever get confused about her role versus yours. That's the issue that you're missing, which will clear it all up for you. Your role is to love her, and hers is to get loved. Period. That's it. We're done. It is not her role to comfort you, to understand your pain, or anything like it. So, no, honey, you don't need to share the details with her. In fact, I would recommend you don't. Tell her what she needs to know, which is that you have other wise men and women who are helping you with your pain, with your healing. And she doesn't ever need to worry about that. She doesn't ever need to worry about your pain because you're going to be working at learning to love her. You're not keeping secrets from her. You're simply not telling her what she has no need to know. That's all. Here's another Sylvie story. Jeanette sends me these during the week. She I remember once I said to her, write a journal of your past Sylvia experiences and send them to me. And she said, well, I've forgotten them all. And I thought, well, how could you forget these cool stories? And then I realized I don't remember any stories from any of their childhoods either. She said, Jeanette said, I was making dinner and Sylvie came running into the kitchen. I stopped. We enjoyed a long, tender hug. And at the end of it, without me saying anything, Sylvie says to me, yeah, Mom, I feel the same way. This kid just cracks me up. I mean, she understands love. She understands tender. She understands sharing. When kids are unaffected by wounding and we don't screw them up, turns out they're pretty insightful. And they tend to do the right thing and they tend to be loving. We just have to not screw that up. They're not born screwed up. I wrote on Facebook, I don't remember how long ago, our motivation behind any action means everything. Even kindness can be used to manipulate people. And somebody wrote, some member wrote, I agree. Would you say more about that? So let me illustrate how kindness can be used as a manipulation and illustrate with an example. I can say thank you to you, for example, and on the surface it would appear to be a kindness. But I can say exactly the same words with vastly different motivations. First, I can say it to ingratiate myself with you. This is really common. I say thank you consistently and you feel my gratitude, but without intending to, I have obligated you to me. Then if you fail to be kinder and more accommodating with me, I'll be disappointed and it will actually hurt our relationship. You can also sense my manipulation, although you may not be conscious of it, and distance yourself from my clinging. So I'm saying thank you, but I'm really clinging. I'm manipulating you. Second example for thank you. I can say it purely out of social custom, as children are taught to do. Children are taught when they're given something, now what do you say? And you know, I've asked parents, why do you say that? Just, I did that years ago, I don't anymore. And they'll say, well, to teach them to be grateful. Take a look at a kid's face when you say, now what do you say? And the kid goes, thank you. That's not gratitude. That's obligation. And they actually hate it. Third, I could be genuinely grateful when I say thank you, which will make me far happier than if I were not. Gratitude always leads to happiness. And you enjoy the information that I was benefited from something you did. Everybody wins. It's all in the motivation. In fact, somebody who has consistently done something for me, a task having to do with the website, wrote me just today, come to think of it, and said, surely you know by now that I know that you're grateful for what I do. So why do you say thank you? And I said, well, I don't do it to manipulate you. I don't do it really for your benefit. I do it because I feel grateful. And so I'm simply expressing how I feel. It's a natural expression of who I am. I couldn't do otherwise. I don't have a goal. There's not a why. Why do birds sing? That's what birds do. I was feeling grateful. I said thank you. Sometimes I don't. Lots of different ways that we can use kindness. I will always remember attending a group, a real love group, where some people proudly brought in this older woman. She was, I don't know, 70 something probably. And they said, essentially, here's Mother Teresa. Because I'm always interested in meeting people who are genuinely, unconditionally loving. I just love to talk to these people, but they're rare. And so they brought her in. They were so proud. They said, meet Mother Teresa. I don't remember her name. I took one look at her face and went, oh, honey, you are in so much pain. I just asked her one question. I said, tell me about your husband. She exploded. He isn't grateful. He blah, 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 blah. And I said, and what about other people? And I do things for other people constantly and nobody's grateful. Whoa, whoa. Everybody in the group looked like they'd been hit with a sledgehammer in the middle of their forehead. She had been kind for her whole life. And she had done it to establish a role for herself. She had done it so that people would be appreciative and grateful in return. She'd done it so that people would do things for her. She had done it so she would be seen as Mother Teresa. See, kindness, or at least kind acts, but not real kindness. So it's all in the motivation. Here's somebody who said, this is a live chat. I thought you said in an earlier video, oh honey, I probably did, I was way stupider then, that parents should tell their kids things that happen in the parent's life. Just asking, oh, sure. I teach my children lessons from the mistakes that I've made, and they can be really very valuable. So I tell my children about experiences from my past, about my childhood, how I was raised, what I learned, told them about my drug addiction, on and on. But see, I volunteered that. So I'm really glad you asked this, because I wouldn't have thought of this. I volunteered those things as teaching tools. So for example, this woman who was writing about the fact that she'd been sexually molested by her brother, if she had said to her daughter, let me tell you some experiences that I had as a child, and let me tell you what I learned about forgiveness, overcoming victimhood, accepting people who make even serious mistakes that hurt me or potentially hurt me. If she had said that, that would have been an entirely different situation. But notice the way she asked her question. She said, my daughter came to me to offer me comfort for what had happened, demanded to know more, was disappointed that I hadn't told her about all of this years before, and said she was there to comfort me. Oh, well, that's a completely different set of circumstances. The mother was essentially volunteering to be her mother's mother, or her mother's wise man, and that doesn't work. Had her mother simply volunteered some of that on her own to teach, it would have been an entirely different thing. So again, making the point we just made, motivation's the whole deal. So the details of what happened, that's not the problem. Just like kindness is not a problem. Kindness can be a good thing if it's given unconditionally. It can be a really bad thing if it's used as manipulation. Telling the details of your life can be a really good thing if it's used as a teaching tool and you offer it voluntarily. It can be really harmful if a child demands the details and then attempts to comfort you. See what I'm saying? So your question was brilliant. I wouldn't have thought to bring that out, so thank you. And if I didn't answer your question, let me know. Here's a man who was texting me, Bob. He said, all my life I've been looking for a sexual partner. I finally found it in Susie. Best I ever had. And I know Bob. Bob has had, let's call it a multitude of sexual partners. This isn't like Susie was the best of 3. No, Susie was the best of many dozens. He said, but I'm in a several-year relationship with Brenda. So here he is, he's in a relationship with Brenda, but he's found his sexual soulmate, what a contradiction in terms, in Susie. Why does this sexual thing keep reappearing? This is by text. I said, honey, you're just beginning to learn to love Brenda, the woman that he's been in a relationship with for years, in terms of real love. Until you feel emotionally fulfilled with Brenda, with real love, you'll be sexually distracted by Susie. He doesn't know what unconditional love even looks like yet with Brenda, his present partner. So until he knows what real love is, imitation love is going to continue to be a distraction, like sex with Susie. So you have to put Susie aside completely and see what's possible with Brenda, both emotionally and sexually, since he's already in an intimate relationship with Brenda anyway. Bob says, well, I tried for years with Brenda, and all that time I didn't even get close to the excitement that I got with Susie. No kidding, men are so easy. We have all these words for cheap and easy women. I could give you a list, you already know them. Odd that we don't have these words for men, and men are the easiest things on earth. Women actually require, most of them, some kind of like emotional attachment, something. Men, a heartbeat is optional. And I said, so what? That would be like me saying that for 4 years, since he'd been with Brenda for 4 years, I've tried building a 747 with hammer, nails, and 2x4s. All those 4 years count for nothing because I have the wrong tools, the wrong material. Same with you. And I have 2 questions and a comment. How long have you known Susie the sex machine? He texted back, 6 months. Me. So, first, you have no idea what's possible with Brenda, and you have no idea what your relationship is with Brenda. Excuse me, with Susie, the sex machine. 6 months, it's a honeymoon period. The sex will wear off. It's worn off with every single woman you've been with before. And right now, she's just eager to win your attention, so she'll do things with you that nobody else has. Second question, how much younger is Brenda than Susie? Men always think that you're stupid when they're talking about how in love they are. He said, well, she's 15 years younger. Well, yeah, so you're even dumber than I thought. You're early in the relationship with Susie, the sex machine. She's young, which makes you feel young, so you don't know spit either about yourself or about your relationship with either woman. He comes back with, but I keep thinking about her. Yeah. And sometimes I think about Hershey bars, but I don't run off and marry them. And I repeated to him, like I said, dumb. But let's get back to a real explanation. With Brenda, you're building a lifelong relationship. That takes time. With Susie, the sex is immediate and amazing. So it distracts you. You can see it and more. See it, feel it. It's very tangible. Just like with me, narcotics was. It was immediate. It worked better than anything every time. But there was always a letdown. Always. Bob said, I just can't see a future with Brenda. Well, of course not. There are too many unknowns. And he said, but I can see sex with Susie. So I think what I can see is better than what I can't. Yes. It's the immediacy of it. It's the tangibleness of it that's distracting you. Sex, in fact, may never be the best ever with Brenda, the person that you're in a relationship with. But if you add real love to it, it will be good enough. No kidding. Like, plenty good enough. Whereas great sex with Susie, I'm not denying that you're having great sex with Susie. I believe you. But I have never, and I've done this with audiences of 1,000 people at a time. I've asked people, how many people have had great sex in their lives? Hands go up all over the place. How many of you have had great sex with people other than the person you were married to? Well, fewer hands, mostly out of shame. And or how many of you have had great sex like early on in your lives before you got married? Oh, most of the room. Now, out of all of you people who began a relationship with great sex, in how many cases did the great sex alone sustain a relationship for longer than a year? No hands. 0. So you might be the only person on earth who can sustain a lifelong relationship with great sex. You might be the guy, but if you like the odds of 1 in 7 billion, then that would make you really, really stupid. We really do get tricked by the immediacy of all that stuff, and understandably so. If we haven't felt unconditionally loved, well then, dang it, we'll take anything that sort of makes us feel good for a minute. Really fun Tuesday. Lots of cool subjects. Great questions as usual. I really appreciate your sending me your questions. The questions that you send on the forum, the questions that you send to me personally, love them. Please keep them coming. But no matter how fulfilling it can be to get an answer to a question, to have a problem solved, keep remembering that it's how you feel that will make the biggest difference in your life. Find people who love you. I love you. You can look and you'll find other people who will love you. Find it, believe it, remember it. See you in a week.